Well, thank you for making your way back to the No Neutral Moments podcast. It's great to be with you, and we're excited. The book is coming out very soon. We're already handing out promotional copies of the book, The Middle: How the Quiet Majority Can Mend a Divided Nation. Hope you'll get online and get your copy of the book. The audio book will be coming out as well, and we're pretty excited about it. Been on some podcasts, been able to be on some radio shows. We've got some book signings that we're scheduling here in Midland. And so look for that. And we're excited to join with you. But again, thanks for being a part of this podcast. This particular episode, I would say it's going to be a little more sermon-like in tone and conduct and in content, but issues of faith and religion are as much a part of my new book, The Middle, as politics are. So this episode's going to be right in line with the message, right in line with the call of the middle. But I guess there's no other way to say it other than bluntly stated, I've grown increasingly, I guess you could say, tired of Jesus being the justification for actions and reactions with the extremes on both sides. So you can kind of pick your issue. You can say, well, we're going to talk about feeding the hungry. We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about abortion and border security, national defense, Israel, you name it. The list goes on and on. You name the issue, you'll find someone on either side of the aisle quoting a Bible verse or using the Jesus card to make their case. And they're going to use the Jesus card against the other side and say, well, they claim to believe this, they claim to believe that. And so, it was the Jesus card was pulled on me when I was mayor, during COVID and during the mask mandates and the vaccine issues. I'd hear people say things like, well, you're a pastor. How can you not protect people with mandates, whether it be masks or whether it be vaccines? How can you claim to be a Christian and love people if you don't do this, you don't do X, you don't do Y? You're a pastor. How can you infringe upon people's individual rights and freedom? So people use I can say the Jesus card or the Christianity line of defense for just about every case, both sides sort of taking their chance to throw down what I would call the ace of spades of the Jesus card. So it seems like both sides want to claim Jesus for the sake of their argument. But it seems to be the louder we get with our Jesus talk, the less of Jesus we seem to see permeating our lives and permeating our culture. And like I told you, this is a little bit of a kind of like a sermon. I'm not trying to preach at you. I'm just pointing something out as you try to find your way navigating through the extremes and what I'm seeing from both sides. So in culture, let me talk about culture for a little bit, because I love this definition of culture. Culture is the outcome of the behaviors we shame and the behaviors you honor. It's the outcome of the things you say we don't like, and therefore you don't honor those, and the things you honor. I mean, I can walk through just about any organization and you can define the culture by seeing how people shame and honor different things. Like if you have a culture where people show up late all the time, that's because nobody shames being late. And I don't mean pointing their fingers at you and saying, you dirty, rotten scoundrel, or whatever it is. But if people show up late all the time, then you honor that. And so people keep showing up late. If people are early and they're on time, then that's a culture where you honor being punctual. So by this definition, if you kind of got your mind wrapped around this, the reason our culture is so toxic these days and so dominated by the extremes is because we've begun to honor division and disrespect, and we actually shame dialogue, debate, and disagreement with respect. So you see, we if I want to sit down and have a conversation with someone and seek to understand before demanding to be understood, people shame that now. And so we seem to honor disagreement and dishonor, and that's the culture we're in. And the culture is only begin to change when we shame sort of this gratuitous use of Jesus and religion for every cause, and we honor the practice and the value of dialogue and debate and disagreement with respect. And I'm going to keep pressing into this, so don't like log off just yet. Doesn't mean your convictions of your Christian faith don't inform your opinions and your positions and your stances, but it does keep intact the reality that everybody's claim of what Jesus would do isn't always on the mark. I mean, here's the bigger point when it comes to faith and culture and debate when you're talking about claiming Jesus for every cause. So you can't keep using Jesus while at the same time not acting and sounding like Jesus. So following Jesus and claiming Jesus is not some license for political sloganeering and causes. Following Jesus is supposed to be a counter-cultural life and practices that challenges systems and structures in ways where we love God and love others, even when the loving and the doing is hard and it demands respect and honor. I believe a watching nation is growing very tired of political and religious leaders speaking about people they disagree with in such demeaning and pejorative terms so common today. I think the middle is tired of the disrespect that's wrapped up in Jesus' claims. You don't have to look or listen very far to hear people on the right who claim Jesus call people derogatory names and refer to them as evil. And likewise, you don't have to look or listen very far to hear someone on the left refer to someone on the right as evil and call them a pejorative name, while both sides refer to the Bible and the teachings of Jesus in their arguments for policy and practice. So if you keep going on, I think the majority in the middle are tired of what they're seeing and hearing in the name of Jesus from both sides. But let me submit to you a few things we might want to consider. Number one, you either believe everyone is created in the image of God and deserves respect, or you don't. There are a couple of matters I would refer you to in this matter, or maybe better for me to say there's some scriptures I'd refer you to. You can go all the way to the book of Genesis. Makes it pretty clear in Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, and even in Genesis chapter 9 after the fall, if you understand what that is, that we are all people created in the image of God. So this fact alone should demand mutual respect. If both sides want to claim God and claim Jesus, then you have to honor people as created in God's image. So second, both sides like to refer to the founders and the founding documents of our country. But if you're going to honor the founders and the foundations, then you got to stop for a minute. You got to honor the following words that say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those are very risky things. It's risky business, and it requires a moral and a respectful people to honor one another in extreme ways, not being extreme and dishonoring, but honoring each other extremely. You really can't even claim to be moral and respectful if you don't honor people. It absolutely requires the mature and moral practice of disagreeing without disrespecting. The alternative is to name call, to disrespect, to dishonor, which to me is the lazy and childish way of avoiding meaningful and productive conversation that challenges my thoughts and my ideas and my perceptions and viewpoints. It doesn't mean I compromise my convictions, but I have to begin with the conviction of honoring people. Weak people, not strong leaders, use name calling and disrespect and dishonor as a crutch. And it masks immaturity. It masks an immaturity, an absence of deep thinking, and eventually as a habit that denies more of Jesus than exalts the very Jesus often claimed. C.S. Lewis has this phrase, and I'm probably not quoting it exactly, but he says, you'll never meet a mere mortal. Everybody's an eternal person created in the image of God. Even those we disagree with, they are deserving of respect owed to them as an invaluable immortal being. So I'm constantly surprised at the vitriol both sides use towards the other alongside the name of Jesus. When I also consider, if you want to go to the Bible again, the words of Jesus in Matthew 5, when he says, "You've heard that it was said you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you so that you can be sons of your Father." Basically, he says, if you love the people who love you, so what? Everybody does that. But if you want to be different, you have to love the people who don't love you back, who might even disrespect you. And then there's another passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's often referred to as the love chapter. And as you read through that, it talks about all the characteristics of love. And the reason I bring it up is because it goes to this idea of how certain we think we are. Because in that chapter, and you can go look it up, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the Apostle Paul refers to how we actually see through a glass dimly. We don't actually see things perfectly. One day he says we will in eternity. You can study that. But the greater point that he's making is that love endures, and love also pauses for a minute and is willing to say, you know what? I may not be seeing things exactly like they should be seen. I don't know everything. In fact, in the beginning of that chapter, he says, I can have all the answers, but if I don't have love, I'm empty. I'm just making noise. And so the reason I bring that up is there's a lot to unpack here, and there are dynamics at play throughout our lives in many different fronts that make applying the passage really difficult. But let's not allow what's difficult to negate the common call of respect for those we disagree with, and understanding that I can have great convictions, but I still may not be 100% correct. Even more important, I may be right, but I may not be wise. And love demands that I begin with respect, I begin with honor, and I begin with love. It doesn't mean we're going to agree, but it does mean I have to disagree with respect. So I constantly hear the following. So some of you may not even made it, many may not have made it this far in the podcast, but some of you who did, who might be growing angry with what I'm saying, I've heard people say, you just don't want to admit that there's good and evil, and we're in a battle against good and evil, and those people over there are evil. Okay. I do know we're in a battle against good and evil, but I'm also reminded of the words again of the Apostle Paul when he says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We have another enemy that's a spiritual enemy, meaning for those who hold a view that there's an unseen but very real spiritual reality around us, people are not the enemy first. There's a spiritual enemy that's the enemy. If you really want to dig down into the kind of the sermon nature of this, my job is to love and to honor and respect first, even if we disagree. So let me wrap this up. When it comes to claiming Jesus, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus again in Matthew 6. In Matthew 6, he begins by saying, hey, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. And then he says, when you give, when you pray, when you fast, without anyone seeing it or hearing about it, don't try to put a show to your practice of your faith. In other words, serve Jesus the way you're supposed to and leave the rest up to the Lord, because he says, let your good works be seen by people, your good works be seen by people, not your religious actions, but your good works, so they would glorify your Father in heaven. What I'm concerned about is people are just hearing our negative, bad words directed at God's creation, and then we're negating the conversation because we can't disagree without disrespecting and dishonoring people. So in the early church, the watching world that described Jesus followers as Christians, little Jesus people. Today, Christians like to claim their Jesus status and hope you listen because of their Christian claim, while disrespectful behavior and words don't remind people of Jesus at all. We have seen this, and I've had enough of it. And I think now's the time for lives that look and sound like Jesus instead of first sounding off for Jesus. I'm truly saying that, I guess, if I'm truly saying and doing what Jesus wants me to say and do, I don't have to tell anyone I'm doing the Lord's work. The work's going to speak for itself. In the book, I talk about the fact that you can be right, but you may not be wise. I said that just a minute ago. With this claiming of being right for Jesus, consider, as we conclude this thing, some other words from the Bible, and they're found in the book of James. In James chapter 3, it says, "Who is wise and who is understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom." And then it goes on and it says, "But if there's bitter jealousy and selfish ambition," and if you do some research about those words, it literally means if there's politicking and jockeying for position, then this is not the wisdom that comes from above. James says it's actually the wisdom that comes from below. That kind of quote unquote wisdom is actually wicked. And he uses words, if you do the research on them, that say electioneering and politicking, and that is all around us. But it says the wisdom from above, it's pure, it's peaceable, it's gentle. It says it's open to reason. It's full of mercy. It has good fruit. It is impartial and it is sincere. So when you think about these things, maybe it's time we start letting actions define confession instead of confession or confessing something that our actions don't line up with. And maybe even more importantly, our words don't line up with. So you either begin with the respect due someone that is created in the image of God, or you don't believe they're created in the image of God and deserve respect. That's a fundamental question we have to be asking ourselves. Let's reset and let's begin with honor and respect from a foundation or for a foundation of debate and disagreement that refuses to dishonor. And we're going to have to require this of leaders and elected officials, leaders in the church, leaders outside the church. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be the right thing to do. And it will be wise, and people might finally begin to see Jesus through our actions rather than doubt him because of our words. And so I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's preachy. It's a bit of a sermon as I just wrap this thing up, but I'm tired of hearing Jesus being used, but the actions not displaying where we must begin, which is even the people I disagree with and that might even make me a little bit angry have been created and are created in the image of God. And I've got to find a way to respect. And that's not a compromising of conviction. That's beginning with deep conviction that then allows deeper conversations that might still end in disagreement, but they don't have to end in disrespect. I hope you'll think about this a little bit, consider what I'm saying, and thanks again for tuning into No Neutral Moments. Remember to order your copy of The Middle, and look forward to seeing you or hearing from you in the future. God bless, take care, and thanks again for joining.